fill out applications for people to file for citizenship and green Spanish speaker, and so I also do translations. So how translations work right now, there are a lot of different types of applications for which you would need a translation for the immigration service. Okay, so this is again, sometimes people come to us with other translation requests, but it's generally around these civil documents, which would be come for a driving record translation. But especially when it pertains to immigration, it's generally those second full-time workers since 2003 on October 1st. We see about 900 people a year, and we've been doing that on 16 hours for the director and 35 hours for me. So it's really nuts. Like, we have way more work than we can possibly be part of the service. Like, I can't even do it for money for the immigrant center. I mean, I just don't have enough time with my immigration casework. And so we maintain a list of people who do it, myself included, outside of work for money, which is $25. However, if you have a bilingual friend and you do a translation and they were to put their certification at the end of it, great. Do you know what I mean? Like, the immigration, 2 workers in the office and other people in the community do these. So my idea was, because we have to fundraise about $50,000 a year just to stay open at the immigrant center, that maybe we would offer this as like a 2-month thing for our clients, where we would say, like, do you need a translation anyway? Like, have you been just putting off getting this done, or are you going through a process soon or now where you need one? Because you're gonna pay the same amount anyway to a private translator. And again, I'll keep telling my clients, look, if you can find a way to do this without paying somebody money, more power to you, because immigration is expensive. But a lot of people really do want what they consider a professional translation. And if they really want that, then the idea is, great, how about you give the $25, and for these 2 months, any money that you pay is going to just go directly to the center instead of to a private translator. So I feel like it's a really win-win situation. And also because throughout the years, I've had a lot of people wanting to volunteer, but transportation is a big thing, you know what I mean? And it's really hard to do work for us remotely. It's almost impossible. So this is kind of why we came up with this. Again, if you guys are not interested in doing this at this time or in volunteering with us at this time, save those forms so you don't have to print them out again. Maybe you want to do it in the future. But first and foremost, I need today to also be confidential. You know what I mean? These are people's names. You know what I mean? So I cannot stress enough how important it is to maintain confidentiality. And I guess the idea for me would be, I'm happy to have you save some samples of birth certificates if you want to delete identifying information, but at the end of December 15th, you would delete everything from your computer. Do you know what I mean? Just because, again, it's people's stuff. Okay, budget, I did, why translation, self-certifying. So the idea, again, is I come in and I'm hey, I'm getting married, but I need a copy of my birth certificate translated, and the secretary says, great, I can give you a list of private translators, or we're doing a special this month where you can also, and the idea would be for us to promote it with clients, send out an email, you want to get it done and you want it to be a donation to the center, it's the same price. So we would get it, we would scan it, I would send it to the coordinator, and then the coordinator would somehow figure out who's going to do what when. Now, how many of these am I going to get? I don't know. I got 4 this week, but the last 2 weeks I've gotten 0. Do you know what I mean? So we really actually don't know how many we're going to get. We'll try to promote it with clients, but it's possible, when she's saying no, or it's possible that you'll sign up for this and you might not get one. Do you know what I mean? Depending on, and I don't know how you're going to rotate it, but that's a thing. So you would do the translation. Again, this level of being a professional, I think, is really important because they are paying for it. Do you know what I mean? So and I know this from my own personal experience, there is nothing worse than having somebody pay for a translation and having spelled their name wrong or gotten their date of birth wrong because it's a typo. I mean, it's just embarrassing. And it's totally fixable because we'll have them, but that's what we mean when somebody checking it over. Nobody is going to sit there and press Google Translate in order to verify your translations. What would be the point? And I can't do that either. I really have to trust in this process because otherwise it's not a fundraiser for the Immigrant Center, then we're just taking the time to do it. So again, the main things are spelling of the names of towns and things like that, and dates of birth and people's names, Getting those things right is really important. And the person on the other hand who checks them doesn't necessarily have to be fluent in that particular language. Now if there's another alphabet, then we're going to have to talk. But as long as it's the Roman alphabet, you could not be fluent in Spanish and maybe be a fact checker for these because, again, you're checking the spelling of things and you're checking dates to a certain extent. Okay. And again, it is not like the end of the world, I mean, for example, so everyone in here is fluent in more than one language? Okay. How many people are fluent in Spanish? Okay. How would you say I'm watching TV? Okay. I just heard more than one thing, right? So again, there's going to be more than one right answer. I mean, definitely like, yo odio televisión, which means I hate television, would be a wrong answer. But you could be, estoy mirando televisión, veo televisión, estoy viendo televisión. There's a bunch of different things that you could say that would not be wrong. So again, keep that in mind in terms of translation. And any language is going to be like that. There are certainly things that are, you know, the cow watches TV, for example, would not be I watch TV. But there are things that are going to be close. And what I love about this project is what I really think is most important, in addition to accuracy of names and dates of birth and things like that, is that it looks nifty in the English language. You know, so if you were conveying, don't kill yourself to, you know, el que suscribe jefe de registro civil extende la presente acta de inscripción de nacimiento de, you can translate that in a lot of different ways. But again, it's really conveying the idea that this head of the civil registry, or we could say director of the civil registry, we could say a bunch of different things, but if we're conveying the idea that this person is issuing, extending, making, or like if it has words like teddy bear in it and it's a birth certificate, that's going to raise some red flags with them in terms of the accuracy of the translation. Okay, does that make sense? Okay. Confidentiality. Again, translation is just the passing on of information. So if for some reason, you're not going to have any translations that are going to say, you know, I was dog tired, but like, you know, you're not going to say dog and tired in that language. Do you know what I mean? You're going to take the meaning of that particular expression and translate that meaning, you know, or as close as possible. It is not your job also if there were to be profanity or like something that you found unsavory in a translation. It is not your job to edit it or try to explain why that word is there. It is just your job to translate to the best of your ability. And if you don't, if some of this is illegible, I've gotten really good at cursive from Guayaquil, Ecuador, because I do a lot of these. Feel free to, in certain cases, I would say, you know, for this project, to write a note when you send it. There were things that were illegible, and I put in parentheses, translation, you know, translator's note, words, illegible. And I can go back, and in many cases, I can ask somebody, and they'll be like, oh, no, it was this, you know, because they understand it was their grandfather's name, so it is suddenly not, it's not illegible to them. In other cases, we just leave it as words, you know, illegible. And again, unless it's kind of a date of birth or something like that, and I'm not going to worry about that. Translations can go in with that kind of note. So when you were sending these back, I would definitely just give a note to Susie or the coordinator saying that please note that I put, you know, translation, you know. So that would obviously prompt us to talk. So, okay, so translation of this. So I think this is pretty straightforward up top here. Republic of Ecuador, and it says Dirección General de Registro Civil, Identificación y Celulación. There's a million different ways to translate that. The main idea behind it is some sort of headquarters or main office of the civil registry of identification and nationality. So again, even if you put something like headquarters of the civil registry and you didn't put identification and celulación, which is printing of national IDs, it's okay. Do you know what I mean? Immigration is not going to be stuck on that. Inscripción de nacimiento, birth certificate, so volume 1, page 32, certificate 32 here. And then, again, it would be just a translation. You can certainly use all caps. Like if you want to get fancy and you feel like you have time for the things that are in caps, you can bold things that you think are important. Like you really don't have to. Do you know what I mean? You really could have it be kind of a rambling paragraph of this, you know, because sometimes they'll get that kind of thing. I think one of the main things that, there's obviously a certain vocabulary that hopefully you'll start to get. You can certainly ask. We can start to keep a list of vocabulary words that keep coming up, like celulación in Spanish or other words in other languages where like you guys just kind of agree upon a term that's going to work, or you can certainly say like, hey, can I translate it like this? Again, it doesn't have to be equal. But I think part of it is just kind of developing that vocabulary. And again, as long as it is an accurate translation to the best of your ability and not crazy town, I don't think that it's not going to matter. Do you know what I mean? If you use a different word for celebración than somebody else does. A lot of them are split. And so you can see that this side has no words written in. This is for legitimation, this is for marriage, this is for death and divorce, and this is how Ecuador did it during this period of time. And so you don't need to translate all of that. You know what I mean? I think you could put translators. No, this section is for updates to birth certificate, including marriage, divorce, etc. It is left blank because really what they of course, it doesn't necessarily make sense if you don't put name and first names and last names of the mother, right? Like you do have to put what they want, but if there's nothing written next to it and there's a whole section like that, it is mostly okay to summarize what that particular section is. So let's look at what, I don't know if this is mine or Elisa's, but can we go to the next?
Sure.
I'll show you what we ended up doing for this. Any questions about this before we move on to the actual translation? Anything that you're noticing that you're like, how would I do that? Yeah?
Do we just write all of it in a Word document?
Yes, it's all just in a Word doc. Again, it doesn't need to be fancy. For the split page, you can choose whether you want to do it first or second, but again, I'll do translator's note in parentheses and I'll say, along the left-hand side of the document appears a column, blah, 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 and then I'll do the translation of that column, and then I'll put translator's note along the right-hand side of the document, the meat of the document. Where it says signature in parentheses, I put signature. I don't try to necessarily decipher whose signature it is unless it is relevant. So you can see that in this particular version of it, I think Elisa did this one, she didn't even necessarily choose to do it in the exact same way as they had. And then she chose to pull out this information and do it in a paragraph. Mine tends to be more like a paragraph. So again, you can see that there's kind of a variation and the information is still the same. Like what is this person's first name? What is their last name? Gender, date of birth. Again, I think as long as you're sticking to what's as close to what is written there as possible, you're okay. Some translators really do though like to kind of take out the meat of it and make it look more like maybe a birth certificate from the United States. I think that's okay as long as you're not missing other words, but I think it's also okay to have it be a rambling document with a bunch of sentences if that's how it appears in another language. So keep going, Susie. Great, yep. So notes, she put blank, and then signature, she did, sometimes you'll have the person's name and then you'll have a signature. I wouldn't have even probably put this guy's name, I probably would have just put in parentheses, official signature of head of the registry. If there are seals, I'll put official seal of the registry of Ecuador. I mean, they're not really interested in you translating like liberty, faith, and love, and then like, they don't care, what they're and again, if there are stamps on the back of it, none of that needs to be translated. You guys aren't going to get the back. We're obviously going to scan what we want translated, but just for your own knowledge, they really just want the meat of this. And if we were ever to send you a translation that required notarization or was something different, like an insurance agency might be looking for something slightly more bureaucratic, but most of this is again for the Immigration Service or the Department of State, which is the National Visa Center. So bringing somebody into country or helping somebody get an immigration benefit here in the United States. Any questions about this? Okay, let's go on to another one. So again, Elisa certified it. Her certification is slightly different than mine. Again, it doesn't matter. Okay. Going on. So here, this is Colombia. Anybody from Colombia or have parents from Colombia? No. Okay. We see a lot of birth certificates from Ecuador and Colombia lead our client numbers. So I've become quite familiar with regions as well. And what's really nice is that more recent birth certificates are really standard. Do you know what I mean? Like an Ecuadorian birth certificate right now in Ecuador is pretty much standard. And if somebody gets an updated birth certificate, it will often be kind of the same thing and it's much shorter. So up here, again, I have